Montana Territory, spring of 1874, the sky was choked with smoke when Fletcher Sutton rode over the ridge and saw the valley burning. He yanked the reins, pulled his horse to a stop. Below, what was left of a small homestead smoldered in black curls of ash and ruin. The barn was gone, just a skeleton of beams. The cabin roof had collapsed. Nothing moved except embers rising into the pale sky and the wind dragging the smell of charred wood and sorrow up the hill. Fletcher slid from the saddle, boots crunching over dry grass. He had been heading west from Bozeman, looking for work, maybe a ranch in need of hands. But this was different. This was not chance. This was someone's worst day. He stepped closer, hand resting near the butt of his Colt. Fire did not just start itself. Something had gone wrong here, and he needed to be sure no one was still alive, or worse, half alive. That was when he heard the cough. He spun toward the heap of what had once been the root cellar, where the heavy door hung crooked on broken hinges. It had been buried in falling timber. Fletcher threw off the charred boards, peeled back the broken door, and there she was, a woman. Covered in soot, mud streaked down her face, blood dried at her temple. Her eyes fluttered open as he crouched beside her. "Hey," he said, voice low, "do not move too fast." "You are all right now," her lips parted, dry and cracked. "My children," she rasped. Fletcher's heart dropped. "Were they with you?" She shook her head weakly. "I sent them to the creek, this morning, before—" Fletcher stood fast, scanning the landscape. "Where is the creek?" She pointed with a shaking hand. "East, through the trees." He was already moving. It took him 20 minutes to find them, two small figures crouched behind a fallen pine, clutching each other. A boy, maybe 8. A girl, younger. Their eyes were wide with fear, but when he said their mother was alive, they burst into tears and ran to him. He carried the girl and held the boy's hand all the way back. When he returned to the wrecked homestead, the woman was sitting up, her back against a tree, arms open. The children ran to her, folding into her arms. Her name, he learned, was Kendra Easton, and her children were Will and Willa. "I thought you were gone," the boy sobbed. "I am here," she whispered, holding them close. "I am here." Fletcher gave them space, but he stayed close. He fed them what jerky and bread he had in his saddlebag and brought water from the creek. As the sun dropped low and the wind picked up, he started a fire with what was left of the woodpile. That night, Kendra sat beside the fire, wrapped in his blanket. Her face was still streaked with soot. Her dress was torn and blackened. Ash clung to her hair like snow, but her eyes were clear now, steady on the flames. Fletcher sat across from her, his knees drawn up. The children lay curled up under another blanket, already asleep. "Who did this?" he asked gently. She was quiet a long time, then she answered. "I could not say for sure, but I know they were not strangers to this land. They knew where we kept the horse, the dogs, the back door. My husband died 3 winters ago. We have been alone since." "Did you see them?" "No, but I heard them, men laughing, and one of them said my name." Fletcher's jaw tightened. "You think they will come back?" "I think they meant to kill us, and they will see they failed." He nodded slowly. "Then we need to get you out of here." Kendra looked at him across the fire, her face unreadable. "Why did you stop? You could have kept riding." "I saw smoke, thought someone might need help." She stared at him a moment longer, then her voice quiet. "I was covered in mud and ashes when you found me. My children were gone, and you still helped." Fletcher met her eyes. "You still shine to me." Her lips parted a little, but no words came. Something shifted between them, an understanding, unspoken but settled, like a door opening just a crack. The next morning, he helped her bury what was left of the homestead tools too broken to salvage, the dog's body, the place her life used to be. When it was done, she stood by the grave of the dog, hand resting on Will's shoulder. Fletcher came up beside her. "Come with me," he said. "I do not have much, but I know a ranch near Missoula. They will take in a widow with children if I ask them." She looked at him, tired but strong. "And you?" "I will stay with you," he said, "if you will let me." She studied him, eyes soft. "You do not know me. I know enough. I saw you crawl out of fire and stand tall for your children. That is enough for me." Kendra let out a breath, and it caught in her throat. Then she nodded. All right. It was not a love story yet, not fully. But it was something close, a beginning, born in ash and quiet, with the hardest part already behind them. Fletcher helped her onto his horse. The children rode in front of him, safe between his arms. And Kendra, she leaned back against him, her head resting near his shoulder, the wind pulling strands of soot-streaked hair across her face. She did not cry. She did not tremble, she just held on, and he did too. The trail west bent through grasslands still wet from snowmelt, the earth soft under the horses' hooves. Fletcher rode with the children close, the girl tucked in front of him, her small hands gripping the saddle horn. Kendra rode behind, steady despite the bruises blooming beneath her skin. She hadn't spoken much since they left, but her eyes stayed sharp, watching the land, measuring distance and shadow like someone who'd once had to learn fast. That third night, they made camp in a hollow where cottonwoods leaned down to drink from a shallow stream. Fletcher built the fire low and slow, tucked between rocks, and Kendra took to slicing the last of the salt pork without being asked. Will gathered dry twigs from the underbrush, and Willa curled up on a blanket with her cheek pressed to a saddlebag. As they ate, the wind stiffened. Kendra wiped her mouth with her sleeve and studied the sky. That cloud shelf will bring rain by morning, she said, voice even. Might be better to stay put a day. Fletcher nodded. We've got beans left, and I can take the rifle out at first light, see if I can scare up a hare. She didn't thank him. She just met his eyes and gave a short nod like an agreement passed between equals. It settled something in him, that look. Later, after the children had gone quiet under their blankets, Kendra set a stick into the fire and watched it burn down to glowing red. I lied to you. Fletcher turned his head toward her but didn't speak. Back at the place, she went on. I said I didn't know who it was. That wasn't true. He didn't interrupt, just waited. She kept her eyes on the fire. His name's Royce Latham. Used to run with my husband when they were younger, back before the war. After Matthew passed, Royce came around the claim more and more. Said he had business up that way, but it wasn't business, not really. Fletcher's jaw set, but he kept his voice calm. Did he threaten you? Not outright, but he made it clear he didn't think I ought to be running things alone. Said it wasn't right, a woman with land and no man beside her. I told him I wasn't interested. Next time he came, he brought 2 others. I kept a shotgun near the stove after that. She pulled her knees up and wrapped her arms around them. He came again a week ago, told me it'd be easier if I saw reason, said I could keep the children with me. Said he'd make sure we were taken care of. She snorted, bitter. Said it like a gift. You told him no. I told him I'd rather burn the place to the ground. Fletcher looked at her through the firelight, the glow catching the edge of her cheekbone, the smudge of ash still clinging to her sleeve. You think he took you at your word? I think he made sure of it. He reached over and tossed another stick onto the fire. Sparks leapt and scattered. You afraid he'll follow? She shook her head. I think he thinks we're dead. That thought sat between them a while. Fletcher leaned back against his saddle and stretched out his legs. That ranch, I mentioned, it's run by a woman named Marla, widow too. She don't ask questions she don't need answers to. Got cattle, chickens, a hand or two, nothing fancy, but it's safe. Kendra didn't answer right away. Then what you do before this? Drove freight down from Helena. Helped lay track outside Butt, broke horses for a spell near Billings. Never stayed in one place long. She glanced at him. Why not? He hesitated. Didn't have anyone to stay for. She nodded slowly, eyes going back to the fire. They didn't speak again until the rain came just before dawn, a slow, steady patter that soaked the grass and hissed against the coals. Fletcher rose early, rifle slung over his shoulder, and walked out into the trees. By the time he returned, boots wet and a hair slung over his belt, Kendra had already gathered kindling and stacked it beneath the overhang of a rock ledge. She glanced at him, took in the catch, and moved to skin it without a word. They worked quietly, side by side, the way people do when words are less useful than action. The smell of roasting meat filled the hollow, and Willa sat up yawning, her hair a tangled mess. Will followed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Fletcher handed Kendra the first cooked piece. She passed it to her daughter without fanfare. After breakfast, he checked the horse's hooves, cleaned the rifle, and studied the trail west. The storm had passed, leaving the air sharp with pine and wet soil. Kendra joined him, arms crossed. How much farther? Marla's place sits just south of the Bitterroot. 3 more days if the weather holds. She nodded, then looked past him toward the trees. You ever think about settling down? I used to think I couldn't, he said. Didn't know what for. She didn't look at him when she asked, and now he did look at her. Mud still clung to the hem of her skirt, but her spine was straight and her chin lifted like someone who hadn't let fear hollow her out. Now I figure I might have just been waiting on the right reason. Her eyes met his. She didn't smile, but her face softened like the edge of something cold beginning to thaw. She turned and walked back to the fire without saying anything more. But he watched her go, and for the first time in years, he let himself believe he might be done running. By the time they reached the edge of the Bitterroot Valley, the snowmelt had given way to green hills and swelling creeks. The horse moved slower now, carrying the weight of 4 and the long days behind them. Fletcher walked beside it more often than not, reins loose in his hand, boots soaked through from the soft-bottomed trail. Kendra kept to silence through much of that last stretch. Not the same wary silence she'd worn in the beginning, but a deeper one settled, like river stone. She watched the land as they passed through it, taking in the fresh cut hay fields and low fences, the smoke rising from distant cabins. Her eyes moved with purpose, like a woman who had once had a place, and was measuring whether she could ever take one again. That evening they came up on a slope scattered with wild lupine. Below it sat a flat-roofed house tucked against a stand of pines, with a lean-to barn and a few scattered hens scratching by a trough. A woman stepped out from the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair was plaited back in a thick rope, silver showing through the black. She didn't wave. Just waited. Fletcher lifted Will down first, then Willa, and handed Kendra the reins. She's Marla, he said. Fair as they come. Kendra gave a single nod and started down the hill with the children close behind. Fletcher didn't move until she reached the porch. Only then did he follow, slow and deliberate. Marla's eyes swept over the 3 of them, pausing longest on Kendra. You the one he went back for? I am, Kendra said. Marla nodded once. Good, come inside. The cabin smelled of yeast and pine soap. There were 2 rooms, a main one with a stove and cot, and a partitioned back with a small bed and shelf of folded quilts. Marla set about heating broth and slicing bread without asking questions. Willa curled up on the rug without being asked. Will sat at the edge of the cot, eyes darting from window to door as if still measuring exits. Kendra stood near the stove, her arms folded tight. Marla ladled soup into a tin bowl and handed it over. You'll stay in here with the young ones. Fletcher's got the hayloft. Kendra glanced toward the closed door before looking back. We won't stay long, just until I find a way to earn our keep. Marla's expression didn't change. You'll stay as long as you need. No one rushes healing. That night, the wind pushed against the cabin walls and Fletcher lay on a bed of hay with his coat rolled beneath his head. Through the slats in the barn wall, he could see the outline of the house, lamplight flickering behind the curtain. He didn't sleep much. Just listened to the wind and kept his hand near the rifle. By morning, he was already outside, hauling water and splitting wood. Marla found him by the chopping block and handed him a biscuit. She's not used to folks doing for her, she said, not unkindly. I don't mind, Fletcher said, brushing sawdust from his sleeve. You mean that? I do. Marla's gaze held his a long moment. Then don't give her reason to doubt it. Inside, Kendra had tied back her hair and was showing Will how to grind cornmeal with a hand stone. Her sleeves were rolled and the skin of her arms was marked faintly with healing burns. She didn't notice Fletcher at the door until he cleared his throat. Got a job for me? He asked. She looked up, then back to the stone in her son's hands. I'm sure Marla's got a fence or 2 that needs mending. I meant from you. Her hands paused. Then she wiped them on a cloth and stepped outside with him, shutting the door behind her. The morning sun was sharp against the frost still clinging to the grass. Kendra crossed her arms. You don't owe me anything, she said. That's not what I asked. She looked away toward the barn. You want to stay? I do. Why? He stepped in closer, not touching her. Because something started back there in that valley. And I haven't seen a reason to let it die. Her breath came out slow. I can't give you a promise. I'm not asking for one. I'm asking for a place to stand. She looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes weren't guarded this time, just tired and full of thought. You said I still shine. Even when I was half covered in death. I meant it. She nodded once, slow. Then maybe you ought to stay close enough to see what comes next. Fletcher's shoulders eased. I can do that. They stood a while longer, not speaking. The breeze caught her skirts and sent a few strands of hair across her cheek. He reached out, brushed them back, and let his hand fall away. She didn't flinch. Inside the cabin, the children's voices rose, Willa laughing while telling her to hush. Kendra turned toward the sound. They'll want to go outside. I'll take them, Fletcher said. She hesitated, then nodded. All right. As he opened the door, she caught his sleeve. He looked back. You're not just passing through anymore. No, he said. I'm not. She let go. He stepped inside. And behind him, she stood with the sun on her face, the wind tugging her hair loose, watching him like she finally believed he'd stay. The days fell into a rhythm, not soft exactly, but steady. Fletcher rose early before the frost lifted and worked with Marla mending fence line, hauling feed, tending to the milk cow's sore hoof. Kendra stayed close to the cabin, sewing patches into her children's worn clothes, teaching Will how to read from a tattered primer she'd packed away long ago. Willa gathered eggs with quiet pride, her small boots leaving patterns across the muddy yard. There were no declarations, no grand gestures. But the space between Fletcher and Kendra filled with small, deliberate things: a coat mended, a saddle cinched tight without asking, a quiet glance held just long enough to be felt. One afternoon, Fletcher returned from the north slope with his shirt damp from creek mud and a length of broken wire looped over his shoulder. He found Kendra crouched by the root cellar behind the house, pulling weeds from between the stones. Her sleeves were rolled, hands covered in earth. You don't need to do that, he said, setting the coil down. She leaned back against her heels and wiped her brow with the back of her wrist. I do. It's the work I can do right now. He crouched beside her. You planning to plant something? I was thinking beans, maybe squash. If Marla doesn't mind me turning the soil out here, I'll help you dig it out. She didn't answer right away. Then, you always offer first. He brushed dirt from his knee. You'd rather I waited for permission? No, she said. I just haven't known many men who ask nothing in return. Fletcher's voice was quiet. You do now. She looked at him, and this time the silence wasn't heavy. It was warm, like the sun through the barn slats at noon. Later, while we'll read aloud from the primer and Willa braided grass into loops near the porch, Fletcher returned from the barn with a small wooden crate tucked under one arm. He set it down beside Kendra, who was oiling the hinges of the back door. Found this in the loft. Marla said it was left behind by the last family who stayed here a while, thought it might be useful. Inside the crate were 6 seed packets, their edges curled with age but still legible. Kendra picked up the one labeled pole beans and turned it in her hand. I didn't expect this. You didn't ask for it, he said. That's different. She ran her thumb along the paper seam. I used to save seeds back when Matthew was alive, had a whole box of them. Lost in the fire. Then it's time you had some again. She looked up at him, her eyes soft in a way he hadn't yet seen. You're not like him. No, he said, but I know what it is to lose a thing you built. She nodded once. You ever build anything of your own? He thought for a moment. Not yet. And there it was, an opening, not wide, but enough for something to begin. That evening, after the children were asleep, Kendra stood just outside the cabin door. The moon hung low and wide, pale across the hills. Fletcher approached, his boots quiet on the packed dirt. Marla says there's a traveling peddler coming through in 3 days, Kendra said. He's known to trade fair, might have fabric, maybe a real book. Fletcher leaned against the porch rail. That'd be something. She hesitated, then said, I'd like to make the children proper clothes. Something that wasn't stitched from an old flour sack. I'd like to give you the coin for it. I can't ask for that. You didn't. I'm offering it. Kendra's shoulders eased. You always do that. He tilted his head. Do what? Step forward when others would wait. He looked at her quiet. Then you deserve someone who does. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she turned to him fully, the moonlight catching the edge of her cheek. Do you think this could be a place to stay, not just pass through? I do. She folded her arms. I don't know if I'll ever stop measuring every door, every face. You don't have to. You'd still stay. I already have. She looked at him then, and something settled behind her eyes, not surrender, not relief, but recognition. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint scar beneath her left ear, the one she hadn't spoken of yet. "I never expected to feel more than survival again," she said, "but I think I might." He reached out only briefly and touched her hand where it hung at her side. She didn't pull away. "I'd like to build something with you," he said. "Not fast, not loud, just real." She nodded once. "Then stay, keep showing up, that's all I ask. I will." And this time, when she turned back toward the door, she left it open behind her. He followed her through it. By late May, the bitterroot air turned warm enough for shirt sleeves, and the earth, once stiff with frost, softened underfoot. The garden Kendra had cleared behind the cabin had begun to sprout, thin green shoots reaching from dark soil. Fletcher had built a low fence around it, not because she asked, but because he knew the deer were bold come dusk. One morning, after he'd returned from checking the far pasture, he found her kneeling beside the rows, hands deep in the dirt, her hair braided tight and pinned up at the back of her head. She didn't look up when he came near. "They're growing straighter than I expected," she said. "You did it right," he said, setting the bucket of nails beside her. "They know it." She brushed her hands clean against her apron, then stood. Her shoulders were sun-touched now, skin darkening along the edges of her collar. "I haven't planted in years. Feels strange to have hope where there wasn't any. You don't need to explain that to me." She turned toward him. "I know." That afternoon, Marla sent Will along with Fletcher to help repair a wagon tongue that had split near the barn. It was slow work, but the boy listened close and held the brace steady when Fletcher asked. "When they finished, we'll linger." "You always know what to do," he said. "No one always knows," Fletcher replied. "I just keep trying." Will nodded, eyes serious. "Do you think we'll stay here for good?" Fletcher leaned against the wall, wiping his hands on a rag. "That depends. Do you want to?" Will hesitated. "I do. But I think Mama's still waiting for something to go wrong. She won't have to wait forever." That evening, Fletcher found Kendra out near the barn, saddle blankets slung over her arm. She was watching the tree line, her face unreadable in the blue dusk. "You expecting someone?" She shook her head. "No, just listening." He stepped beside her. "You hear anything?" "No, and that's the part I'm not used to." They stood quiet for a time, the wind slipping through the grass. "I saw while watching you work," she said. "He follows you like you're a map." "He's a good boy." "He is," she agreed, "but it's not just him." Willa's started folding her clothes without being told. "I've never seen her do that." Fletcher smiled faintly. "Maybe she wants to build something too." Kendra looked over at him. "I've been thinking about what kind of life this could be, not just for the children, for me." He didn't move. "And I married young. I didn't know what choosing meant. I just did what was expected." "You think this would be that again?" "No," she said. "That's just it. No one expects this." "Not even me." She stepped closer, her voice low. "But I think I'm ready to choose this time for myself." He didn't answer with words. He reached for her hand, and when her fingers curled into his, it was quiet and certain. They married under the cottonwood tree behind the cabin, with Marla as witness and the children standing close. No preacher came. Just Fletcher's hand in hers, and the words they spoke low and honest, with the grass swaying and the sun warm on their backs. That night, after the children had gone to sleep, Kendra sat beside him on the steps, her head resting against his shoulder. The lantern inside flickered against the walls, and the crickets had begun their song. "You never asked me to forget what came before," she said. "I wouldn't," he replied. "It made you who you are." She turned her face toward him. "I don't feel like someone burned down anymore." "You never were," he said. "You just needed someone to help you clear the ash." She kissed him, then not hurried, not uncertain, but slow and steady like everything they'd built. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but not with grief. "I love you," she said. "Not because you saved me, because you stayed." "I love you," he said, "because you let me." Years passed. The children grew taller, the garden wider. Fletcher built a proper shed for tools, and Kendra added rows of herbs along the east wall. Willa took to caring for the hens, and Will began asking about the ledger Marla kept for the ranch's accounts. They weathered late frosts and dry summers, small sicknesses and hard lessons, but never alone. Their love was not loud. But it was visible in the way Kendra reached for his hand when she walked past, in the way Fletcher rose before dawn to warm the kitchen stove, in the laughter that came easier with each passing season. And every spring, when the first shoots broke through the soil, they stood together in the garden, side by side, the air soft with promise. They had not been given an easy road. But they had walked it, one step at a time, until it led them here to safety, to each other, to a life built from the ground up and held by quiet, enduring care. They never left. And they never needed to.